Hey, everybody, welcome to Grab a Stack of Rock. This is 50 Years of Iron Maiden, Episode 2, the debut album, and we have a very special guest with us tonight. It is Mr. John Clauser, Johnny Metal, from his music corner of the world, called My Music Corner. How are you doing, John?
Up the irons, my friend, up the irons.
I see we're both dressed appropriately. Harrison, are you as well? Yes, okay. Yeah. So we know what we're here for. This is episode 2. Last week we covered the Soundhouse tapes and other assorted pre-Iron Maiden album recordings. Tonight we're going to dive into the debut. So without further ado, let's talk about it real quick. This is the Iron Maiden self-titled album, recorded December 1979 by Will Malone. Now, they had some issues with producers. Before Malone, the band made 2 attempts to record in December with 2 different producers, while still a 4-piece band. Guy Edwards was the first producer, and he was dismissed by the band as they thought the recordings were rather muddy. Then they had Andy Scott, who was dismissed after Steve Harris was instructed to play his bass with a pick.
Yes, that's Andy Scott of The Sweet fame.
There you go. Thank you, Harrison. Regardless, they picked up Dennis Stratton on second guitar. This was the lineup of Steve Harris, Paul Di'Anno, Dave Murray, Clive Burr, and Dennis Stratton. Was released 14 April 1980. They call it self-produced because Steve Harris basically says that Will Malone wasn't all that interested, and they worked through the album engineer. The album went to number 4 in the UK charts. It's certified platinum in Canada with 100,000 in sales, and platinum in the UK with 300,000 in sales. So we're going to go through track by track. We're going to start with Johnny Metal, then we're going to go to me and Harrison. We're going to use this as our track guide, incidentally. We're going to start with the opener, Prowler. Johnny Metal, how do you feel about this song as an opener?
Boy, to have only been around and to have known who this band was in 1980. I did not discover this album until I had already heard Number of the Beast and Peace of Mind. So I was a little late to the party. But boy, just to hear that the song that introduces Maiden to the masses. Yeah, there was getting a lot of rumblings thanks to the Soundhouse tapes and Neil Kay and stuff like that. And you get a nice tighter recording here. Because I have heard that Soundhouse version. It's those early versions are always a little rough. What a great opener, though. It just this song just comes right in. Paul Di'Anno with that punky vocal, the Clive just doing a great job at the backbone. Steve's bass way up there. Guitar interlude. This is just a little piece of what we're going to see with Iron Maiden in the coming years. But what a great track to start off with. Absolute, yes, this was a signature track for Dennis Wilcox back before, but Paul makes it his own, and I think he does a great job to start off with. I think it's a great track.
100%. And as you mentioned, Den Wilcox sang this track. It goes way back to the Iron Maiden, pub years, as well, basically all these tracks do, and a number of the songs from Killers as well. I don't really have too much I can add to that because it's just so perfect. I know exactly what we were talking about, that, and Dave Murray on the wah-wah. Nice to hear. There's a lot of wah-wah on this album, I've noticed.
Yeah.
The production is not as sharp as they would get on Killers, but, by and large, with some issues that we'll get into as we go through the album, I don't mind the production, to be truthful. So I guess if none of the credit is due to Will Malone, as Steve would probably have us believe, then, all credit to Steve and the engineers. A kick-ass start to this album, introducing Iron Maiden to the world, up-tempo with lots of texture. It slows down, it stops, and then it goes into a different section, and I've said enough.
Oh,
Harrison,
yeah.
What do you think about Prowler?
All right, first I'm just going to talk a little bit about the album, because this album is one of the top 5 Iron Maiden albums that I reach for most frequently. It just has such a presence. Every single song on it is iconic. Even some of the album tracks. There's not a single song that doesn't have history through the band's career. It's an amazing album. About the production, I personally don't have too much of an issue with the production. I think it sounds fine, except for one song that we'll get to about midway through. But to get to Prowler itself, it might not be their most explosive or energetic opener, but it is still a really great song for all the reasons that you've mentioned. And I love that a lot of the songs on this album have a point about 2/3 of the way through where they really speed up and get all crazy and hectic, and Prowler has that too. And yeah, just a great song, even if it has sort of been forgotten in the live set since.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because if you've heard Bruce Dickinson do versions of it, he does them just fine. Oh, Johnny, was he shaking his head? No.
Well,
We'll get to Prowler 88 when we get.
We'll get there.
We'll get there at a later stage.
We won't. We don't want to pick on Bruce too early in the series. So.
And sorry, I need to add this. Prowler, written by Steve Harris. Next track, Remember Tomorrow, written by Harris and Deanna. It's kind of unusual for a band to go slow on their second song on a heavy metal album. But Johnny Metal, what do you think about a second track ballad?
I thought the same thing. I thought, okay, this is an interesting sequencing here. Fast, and then you go to slow, tender sounding. But you're spotlighting Paul's range here. Yeah, he could do that raspy, punky stuff, but boy, if he needed to get smooth and tender sounding, if you want to put that with Paul Di'Anno, sorry, Paul, I apologize if you don't like that, but that's what this song brings. This is a Paul staple to me. I don't know what else to really. You have a lot of ebbs and flows with this song. You have these nice slow spots. Then you get these energetic, these more fervent. There's a hunger to that when they get fast. And again, the band's just running on all cylinders here. Again, you can speak about the production but as far as I'm concerned, it's perfect for this album. It's raw, it's hungry, it's got those ebbs and flows that define this song so well. Yeah, it's an interesting pick to follow up a fast song, but it works. I think in this case it works. Show all the cards in your deck while you got them, and show it to them early. And I think that's what Iron Maiden's doing here.
Well said. And I think part of the reason they knew that was going to work is because they played these songs live so much. I've always found the song to be a little odd in a way. The chorus has always sounded incomplete to me, from out of the, and he doesn't finish the sentence. Mm-hmm. It's the first bass intro by Steve Harris, foreshadowing things to come throughout their career. Even though the chorus sounds incomplete to me, it obviously doesn't matter. It's a Maiden classic. The quiet, loud dynamic works really well. And the tempo shift in the middle gives the guys who hated ballads something to headbang to. And that part of the song would be an early Iron Maiden gallop, I guess. That would be the gallop. So those are my thoughts on Remember Tomorrow. What do you think about it?
All right, so my copy Remember Tomorrow is song 3, so I don't have that same experience of having it a slower song on the second track, but we'll get to Sanctuary a bit later. But I really like Remember Tomorrow. Paul's versatility with his vocal range is something we'll touch on a bit more when we get to Killers with Martin Popoff. But it's on full display on the Iron Maiden album as well. It's got that soft bit, but it also heavies up for those more aggressive bits throughout. It's a bit reminiscent of all things in their discography, Fortunes of War, because it goes slow, heavy, and then it sort of speeds up for the solo. And I love how Paul would let off these screeches during the live versions. And and particularly that fast breakdown is awesome. I think it's the highlight of the song.
So this brings us to a single a track that was very well known. It was played live. It's appeared on a number of live albums. Running Free. What do you think about this one, Johnny Metal?
Here again, you get the punky energy that Clive's bringing in with the drums. You get this just sparse but effective guitar. You get Steve's just galloping bass. You get Paul Di'Anno's punky attitude in the lyrics and the vocal. To me, this was just another. It's a great It shows that Iron Maiden could write great, catchy, short songs. They don't have to be 10 minutes long and pack a punch. They could do it. They could show it to you that they could do it in 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And this song is a great example of that. I think it's to me another Di'Anno staple. Again, he's the storytelling in the song to me it's just great. It's great track, great single. We'll probably, I know we'll get to these a little bit, but yeah, there's your single cover right there. So I get the early jump on that one. Yeah, great track. Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to pick on Bruce and what I think of his when he sings it. So I'll be nice to him there. So there you go.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, just 16, a pickup truck, out of money. I'm out of luck. I think this is another Harris Di'Anno co-write. So I think there's some real life experience there coming from Paul Di'Anno himself. Bit of a drifter, getting in and out of trouble. It's all there in the song. I really liked it as a kid. I find it a little bit more dull today as an adult, sort of like when you hear Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss 150,000 times in your life. I kind of feel the same about Running Free to a certain extent. I think there's some nice vocal stuff going on the chorus that maybe would not have happened under Martin Birch. Hard to say. The only thing about the song that I really don't like is the pick scratching in the middle. I find it very irritating sonically. It was obviously not present during any of the live versions that we have on catalog. What else did I have to say about Paul Di'Anno? That the lyrics, there's no wizards or supernatural beings. This is the street version of Iron Maiden that no longer exists.
Yes. And
I think that's the key takeaway here, is that these early Iron Maiden tracks are from a band that no longer exists. They have no, and rightfully so, at their age and at their station in life. Steve Harris has no business putting out a song, Just 16, a pickup truck, out of money, out of luck. When they did this, that was recent history for Paul Di'Anno. Harrison, what do you think about Running Free, the album version?
Well, the song Running Free I love. It's one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs. Such an energetic, enjoyable number. But this is where I'm going to sort of bring up the production on this album, because for some reason, inexplicably, the production on Running Free is very different to the production everywhere else, because Running Free is like weirdly muted. Like the production makes it sound stilted and wooden and really just lacking in a lot of energy that the live versions would have. I've barely listened to the studio version. I mean, there are great alternate studio versions out there, like the Axe Attack demo and the radio show, the fourth track radio show that appeared on BBC Archive. They're basically studio versions, and they capture that energy and that intensity that the song has that they somehow weren't able to translate into this album cut for Running Free. And it's not like the rest of the songs on the album are lacking in their respective energy. It's weirdly singled out to Running Free, and that odd sort of chorus high note that Di'Anno does that wasn't anywhere else on any of the other versions. I remember hearing a little thing about the making of this album that Dennis Stratton wanted to put like Queen-like harmonies on some of the songs, and apparently the rest of the band like shot him down. And I'm like, well, what we have on Running Free isn't too many steps away from that sort of Queen-like harmony. It's like like you shot him down for that, and then you put that on Running Free weirdly. But no, I love the song so much, and I think it's a real shame that the studio version couldn't capture the intensity and the energy. But we do have stuff like Made in Japan for that.
And what you
That's
said
true.
about the vocals being Queen-like, it's what I was alluding to as well. And good segue, because the next song is the one that Dennis Stratton spent an evening overdubbing Queen-like vocals on. Phantom of the Opera is what they called it. Phantom of the Opera. Probably the most complex song in Maiden's catalog at that time. And it closes side one. So go ahead, Johnny. What do you think about this as a side one closer?
This one is probably easily one of my top 5 Maiden songs of all time. I love this song. I can remember in high school, I met a guy who played bass, and and I was just starting to learn guitar a little bit better, and I was getting along, and I got a tab book, and I started learning this song. And so this song really is stuck in my brain. I was actually able to kind of keep up with the bass player, because he was a far better musician than I could ever be. But yeah, boy, I love this song. And I love the Phantom of the Opera story that it's based from. Great book, great Broadway musical for those that would come later. But man, you get prog, you get elements of punk, you got metal, you got all kinds of different themes going on here. You got guitar interplay, you get bass galloping, you get a lot of feel, you got a lot of emotion, you got everything clicking on every cylinder. What an epic to bring out as your first epic of many, many more to come. To me, this was the one that sets the bar very high, in my opinion.
And like most of those epics, this is solo written by Harris.
Mm-hmm.
This is the song that Paul Di'Anno warned Dennis Stratton was going to be a bastard to learn how to play.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the song that led to Dennis getting fired in the long run, because of his antics in the studio doing all these overdubs. The song didn't need that Queen-like interlude, although, as Harrison said, they were arranging their vocals on that Running Free track. Completely led by Steve Harris. The bass is the lead instrument. It's ahead of the beat. It's intricate, heavy hitting. It's still a blast to listen to this day. I get neoclassical vibes at time, that deedly deedly deedly. I just really like it a lot. It's very diverse, even within its, single song running time. It's still pretty diverse. And Johnny and I both have 8-track versions of the Iron Maiden debut album. And I don't think the 9-track version has the coda at the end of this song, where there's a brief gap and then Paul Di'Anno sings, "Talk to me back at your lair," and it's heavily layered with vocal effects, echo, and whatnot.
That's cut out of the 1998 version as well, I believe.
Yeah, I had never heard that before when I started really listening to the 8-track version again. I had never heard that coda before, because I was like you. I had a 9-track version for the longest time, so that was when I heard it, I'm like, whoa, I'd never heard that before. But
it kind of surprises you when you're not expecting it, which is probably the intent. Like imagine you're sitting there in 1980 listening to the record, getting ready to flip it, and all of a sudden, "Talk to me back at," you'd probably jump.
Yeah.
Harrison, what do you think about the Phantom of the Opera?
I mean, what hasn't been said about Phantom of the Opera? Like, what an amazing song. Like, if the band hadn't gone on to the stratospheric songwriting and chart success that they had, Phantom of the Opera could have been their Hallowed Be Thy Name that was played at every show. But at the moment, it's honestly a little bit of a deep cut. It rarely pops up again, but that just speaks to the quality of the rest of Iron Maiden's discography, because Phantom of the Opera is an amazing song. Like, you've already extolled the virtues of it, but I'm going to point out that on this first Iron Maiden album, there's an above average amount of bluesy parts, like the bluesy middle of Phantom of the Opera. We'll get to Strange World, and then Charlotte the Harlot as well has a bluesy part. Like, that sort of, like, Maiden rarely do blues, especially after this. It's a very unique sound that they have on some parts of this record. But another really cool thing about this Phantom of the Opera is that, as Johnny Meadow pointed out, this was written before the Broadway adaptation, before it sort of was made famous. Like, this is Steve Harris reading the book, the original story, and whatever supplementary or additional adaptations that had happened between the early 1900s and 1980. I believe the musical wouldn't come till about 86 or 87. So that just shows how well read him and the rest of the band were well read too. But Steve Harris in particular, even at that early age in their, well, I say early age in their career, they were 5 years in, but even at their first album.
Very fair, Harrison. Although this is something that we will bring up when we have Martin on the show, but Steve Harris was also very influenced by movie adaptations of books, the books and the movie adaptations. And I believe Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera? I believe so. Anyway,
yes.
Excellent take on that, Harrison. Iron Maiden opened side 2 with an instrumental, Transylvania. And how do you feel about an instrumental opening side 2, Johnny Metal?
Interesting. It's an interesting pick. Not a bad song. Good intricate play. Good. The band's again really tight here. Supposedly somewhere in the mythology of Maiden, this song had lyrics. Who knew? I would love to hear it, but I don't know. But to start the album or to start the side off, I wasn't totally offended by it. I think it works. I like it. I think it's a good chugger. It would have been weird to start it with Strange World. So this actually works nicely as almost like not maybe a little longer version of Ides of March that you guys will talk, when you guys talk on with Martin. But yeah, I think this is just a nice, good segue into Strange World. I like it. I love, again, I can't say enough good things about Clive Burr on this album. I mean, he just sounds so good. And it's just like, and again, I don't want to pick on Nico. There's something about hearing Clive behind the kit on these songs that does these songs correctly. And they're made to sound the way they do. And it works. Sorry, Nico. I'm not going to say no more.
We will talk about this further when we get to 1993, but they did resurrect Transylvania in the set for the Real Live Dead One tour. And it's undeniable. Nico's take on it is simply different from Clive Burr's. And the originator is Clive Burr. I prefer his take on it. This will sort of fall in the category of what I'll call sort of like military marches. Ides of March is like that. Genghis Khan is like that. But this has a part in it, which is definitely a military march kind of part, which is that. It's
funny. I always envisioned the song as having a bit of a nautical shanty swing to it in those parts.
There you go.
I mean, that could have been, there were militaries on the ocean. So that's not entirely incongruent with your interpretation.
The Ancient Mariner came a little early.
The Ancient Mariner came a little early. It's an early, absolutely. Harrison, go ahead, take it from there.
Well, I mean, I love all the Iron Maiden instrumentals. I love Transylvania. It's probably in my top 2. I love how it's sort of it's got motif. It's not like a Joe Satriani song where you've got like verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. When I say Joe Satriani song, I mean instrumental, like Surfing with the Alien. But it does have motifs that it comes back to, like that, as you point out, the brant, 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 and then the bit where Dave holds his guitar up and does his fingers like that at the very bottom of the strings. But my favorite part obviously has to be that fast solo breakdown that ends with these dual guitars coming in at the crescendo. What more can you say? Like, I know Martin Popoff isn't a fan of instrumentals, but I mean, like, when Iron Maiden do them, they do them right. And Transylvania is just one of the examples of that.
Yeah. Yep, totally. Now on my copy, and I'm sure your copy too, it kind of fades into Strange World, which is...
Yeah, it does. Like, the very start of Strange World is sort of mixed in with the trailing notes of... Transylvania, and then like Strange World, the track starts with the very first like strum of it.
Yeah.
So as kids buying albums on cassette, it was always hard to discern where one song was ending and another song was beginning. But I think it works brilliantly as
imagine being a Pink Floyd fan.
Oh God, This was confusing enough. I'd be like, "What song are we on?" Oh, we're in this thing called Strange World.
You'd probably be like, the Wall only has 9 tracks on it, and then you get the CD, and then like, what are these?
Right.
I never understood why Pink Floyd never put any times on their songs. Right? It makes sense. Yeah, Strange World, a song that has not been played by Iron Maiden live since Paul left the band. Very
it's
interesting.
The only one from this first album that Bruce hasn't sung live on.
Nope, he has not. They have not played this song since Paul left. Another slower song that, again, I think as much as Remember Tomorrow, I think Strange World is just as much of a Paul Di'Anno staple. Maybe that's why Bruce never tried to sing it. Again, Paul's very smooth voice. Gosh, what more can you? I can't really say much more about this. It's just this song stays slow for the most part. This doesn't really have any of those kind of wild up and down versions. Like Remember Tomorrow, they didn't have these faster breakdowns. This stays pretty much an even keel throughout the entire song. It's still a great way to show off Paul's range. He was certainly a lot more than that raspy version. So yeah. Good inclusion here. Maybe not as good as Remember Tomorrow. I think I prefer Remember Tomorrow over this song, but it's still a staple to me for Paul.
Agreed. Even though it's a Harris solo right, it is a Paul staple. Interesting fact about that Bruce never sang it, but I love this track. I like it more than anything on Killers. It's softer than Remember Tomorrow. It's more psychedelic. It's more spacey. I think this is the one track where Will Malone's production kind of does it a favor. It's very dreamy, and it's so different for Iron Maiden. And when I first heard this album and got to Strange World, it was like this was a nice break in the middle of the album, this dreamy break. And even the lyrics kind of are that way. Maybe this is Iron Maiden's take on Dreamer by Judas Priest, perhaps. Either way, I love it. Steve Harris is still very present with the bass leading the way. Boom, 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 boom. Can't say enough about how much I love this song. There's nothing like it in the Maiden catalog, and it's one of my favorites for that reason. So, yeah, go ahead, cool. Harrison.
Yeah, Maiden at their most bluesiest with, like you said, touches of psychedelia and all those other parts. I like Strange World. It's not my favorite Iron Maiden song, but I'm honestly really glad that they did put it on the album and they went with the variety pick, because as we know, they had songs like Wrathchild and Killers and all these songs in the can already. They could have easily put another heavy one on there and just left Strange World to be a Soundhouse Tapes offcut. But no, I'm glad that they put it on because it adds variety and character to the album, and it's not a side of the band that we would see very often.
Right.
Very true. Okay, so at this point, now we're getting to the end, and immediately after Strange World kind of fades into the ether, we're hit by this blinding Dave Murray riff, and it's called Charlotte the Harlot.
Charlotte.
Dave Murray co-writes are always special.
Yeah, well, and this one on this one, it's credited to him solely, but he's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Whenever Dave Murray's involved in the songwriting, it always comes up with a really good song.
Absolutely.
But they're mostly co-writes.
But yeah, I mean, here again, Steve's bass, very evident. You get to meet the lovely Charlotte. What more do you need me to say about Charlotte, right?
Well, we'll definitely be learning more about Charlotte in a couple more episodes.
Yes, give it a little more time. But yeah, the first of at least 3 songs to talk about Charlotte. So what a whimsical track. Has that slow section where again you get Paul's nice kind of. Is he trying to be sexy here because it's Charlotte the Harlot? I don't know, but it's that nice smooth vocal that comes in, and I think it was perfect. Because it's like you can feel the protagonist telling Charlotte, "Don't you realize what you're doing?" And he's it's like, come on, But and then it's like, boom, here comes the solo, perfect. I think it's a great song construction. Love it. Always love this one.
Yeah, that bluesy section in the middle, That's so good. It's so good. But
So
what
good.
I really love about it, though, is when we're coming out of it, and Paul's like, "Cause you're making," and he's like, it's like peak piano blues singing again. Guy doesn't get enough credit. We're going to give him plenty of credit here because he's not just a screamer. He is also a great singer, crooner, whatever you want to call him. I really like this song, although I think, as you alluded to, better songs are to come. The subject matter isn't my favorite. I don't really care for Maiden singing about when the ladies have their legs in the air and can you hear all the laughter? Not my favorite, but again, I think this street level Iron Maiden that we haven't heard from in decades, this is stuff that they saw in their, going to and from their gigs, their rehearsal halls. This is stuff that they saw. They saw Charlotte hanging out on the street corners, and they wrote songs about it. Whether Dave wrote the lyrics or somebody else, I don't know, but Dave is credited. Did I have anything else to add about this? I do find myself after this track, though, I do find myself kind of waiting for the next. I don't necessarily feel that Charlotte the Harlot is among the best tracks on the debut Iron Maiden, especially after we've hit Strange World. It's kind of like, give me something better. Give me something a little bit more substantial. But that's the next track, and we haven't heard from Harrison on Charlotte yet.
Right.
Well, I'm taking it in a different direction because of all the songs on this album, it's hard to pick a favorite, but Charlotte the Harlot is probably my favorite. It's such an explosive, energetic, frenetic, crazy number, except when it's not. And it's, once again, like you said, it's a great part where it's that midsection. And then it's just another explosive, frenetic, awesome, exciting energy fest again. Now, one of my favorite parts in the song is just the solos just ending. You get these dual guitars and then the doom, 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 and it's like playing. If you're listening to it with headphones, you get like it all across the stereo thing. It's like it's there and then it's there and it's there and it's all still working together. And then it explodes back into life. And like imagine this on the live circuit, the crazy energy, the headbanging, the air guitar, and not just at the chorus. Like this is before the times of the scream for me and the whoa, 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 whoa. I think as far as the crowd being able to be a part of the song, imagine being on stage and hearing just the chorus Charlotte the Harlot belted back at you by all these sweaty teens in the pub, and I know they had Drifter for their yo-yo-yo crowd interaction, but for a part where the crowd could actually, sing back, I think this song would have been a highlight of the live set. And I really hope one day we do get a live album from this era, which has it on there.
Yeah, I think you have to go to watch the Ruskin Arms show, which I'm sure there's boots of, but I know they have videos of that, and of course you can see them doing that song. But yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Well, the Beat Club show that got taken down actually has Charlotte Harlot live, but that was a German audience, so and it was a TV audience.
Right.
Well, and then Charlotte takes us to our bloody end. We have the signature track that has been played, through. Well, we'll talk about that part later, but this is a signature track. It's a self-titled song from a self-titled album. What do you have to say about Iron Maiden?
When I was just listening to this in the headphones earlier today, I've heard the Live After Death versions. I've seen them do this a couple of times live. I've heard the live versions. I still say what you get on this album is the best that this song has ever sounded, in my humble and silly opinion. I think this studio version is the best version, the definitive version. The live versions just get carried away because they know they got to close the set with it. And it's just, again, now, especially with Bruce, scream for me, name your city. Scream for me, name your city. It's just like, yeah. There's something special about this studio version.
Wow, strong. I just have one question. I mean, this is definitely one of Maiden's punkiest rock songs. The up tempo, the headbang and beat. This is definitely Maiden at their punkiest. But is this Is that a Steve Harris bass solo that I hear somewhere in the song? I think there's a little bit of a bass solo there.
Yeah,
I think there is.
Yeah, one of two bass solos. Well, not two, but I mean, there's one of a few little bass interludes that Steve will throw at us at some point. But
yeah, most definitely. I love Iron Maiden. I don't know. Maybe I do prefer it to live versions as well, Johnny. I don't know. I don't want to, earn Harrison's ire. When we were growing up, my buddy Bob Shipper, we didn't have lyric sheets, but he was singing, "Oh, well, wherever you are." But Bob Shipper always thought, "Oh, well, wherever you are." He always thought it was singing "The world, wherever you are." I don't know why. Anyway,
well, I mean, lyrics sound like what you want them to hear, what you're expecting to hear. So if you mishear something, you're going to continue to mishear it because that's what you're expecting to hear. Yeah. I know that's happened to me at times. Jimmy, the classic one, Jimi Hendrix. Excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Right, yeah. But I don't know. I really like this version. I really like this album. Like, we are now. That's the closing song. We'll talk about some singles and B-sides, but as far as I'm concerned, we ended the album on a great note there with Iron Maiden. What do you think, Harrison?
I love the song Iron Maiden, but the studio version I really don't like because the tempo is just not quite my tempo, because there's parts of the song where Clive's drumming on the studio is just like boom, 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 and it overpowers the rest of the song and what you're trying to listen to, because it's just this bang bang. It's like just banging away at you for parts of the song at this tempo, and it becomes very obnoxious at this specific tempo that the studio version is. My preferred version of the song is actually the Soundhouse Tapes version, which is a little slower, it's a little more rock and roll, and the drumming is not as in your face in those parts.
Yeah, I've heard the Soundhouse version of that too. Yeah, I would agree with that. I could see what you're saying there. Yeah.
Granted, this is here again, maybe the heavy metal take, but I prefer the more rock and roll of the Soundhouse tapes.
Right, and maybe the production will put the drums up a little too high in the mix, so to make it almost too overpowering at times. But yeah, I see where you're coming from there.
So we move on now to a song that isn't on Johnny Metal in my version of the album, but it is a single called Sanctuary. Now, the album version isn't my favorite version of Sanctuary. There's another version that I prefer that we'll have talking about in another episode. But otherwise, I mean, this is another Maiden standard, really, isn't it? What do you think about Sanctuary?
Now, when I first got the first Iron Maiden album on cassette a long time ago, for me, this followed Strange World. It was in between Strange World and Charlotte the Harlot. So that's my way of knowing where Sanctuary would pop in. So no, I always like Sanctuary. Again, you get a lot of these storytelling in the lyrics, that street story stuff. That again, you get a great voice here from Paul. You get a good solid rock and roll riff here, and just carries it through. It's always was a strong song. I think when live, sometimes it gets a little carried away because Sanctuary from the Law. Forgive me. Yeah, then they get back into it. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little, the dramatic effect gets a little carried away, but it works.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's a Bruce Dickinson B-side version that we'll talk about in a future episode where he goes a little bit too long with that. This is a rare three-way Murray Harris Di'Anno co-write, by the way. So again, yeah, you're getting that Di'Anno storytelling, Sanctuary from the Law. I think he was pretty much the one that was being chased by the cops out of the five guys in Iron Maiden. I think it was mostly Paul. And, I find this to be a nice, concise, anthemic Maiden sing-along rocker. Anyway.
Well, for me, I'll just add to this. I always thought he was saying Sanctuary from the Lord. I wasn't
interesting.
I was, for some reason, was hearing Lord for sanctuary from the Lord.
Oh, Lord.
That's what I was hearing. So just to give you that my little lyric confusion. So
well, in case we need clarification, it appears by the artwork by Derek Riggs that he needs sanctuary from the law because he's just murdered the Prime Minister of England. So, yes, I think maybe he needs sanctuary both from the Lord and from the law after that act. But Harrison, what do you think about that single or track 3 on your album?
Or track 2, rather, yeah. On my version, the 1998 remaster with the horrid redone artwork, Sanctuary is track 2. But there's a typo on the back cover where its duration is listed as 0 minutes, 0 seconds.
Whoops.
But anyway, Sanctuary, right. As Mike pointed out, I also share the opinion that the Metal from Others version of Sanctuary is the best version of Sanctuary out there. It's the only version of Sanctuary that I listen to because, quite frankly, I'm just tired of hearing Sanctuary. I think it's overstayed its welcome on way too many live albums, and it's not even my favorite Iron Maiden song. I'm just sick of hearing it, really, unless it's done really well.
I just think it's one of those songs that it's so easy for them to sing along to in the audience. I can just tell the Toronto Maple Leafs scored. But that's not the only standalone single I wanted to talk to, because when I was growing up, the only Iron Maiden music video featuring Paul Di'Anno was not on any album. We're like, where did this song come from? What is this song? Why is it on my TV? And it is the only music video with Dennis Stratton, although he was barely in it because he was already on the outs with the band. But yeah, it's a little track called Women in Uniform. And what do you think about this standalone single, Johnny Metal? We know the band are kind of down on it. What do you think about this single?
I love it. I think I thought it was a great track. Again, it shows their influences. I think, and I think Paul's in great voice. I love the gallop with the guitars and everything. I think it's, to me, this was just a very fun song. And I always was confused why this would show up like on the first 10 years with Twilight Zone from Killers. But then, they included Women in Uniform on Killers in Australia. So I kind of got that. But I never figured out why they did that. But it made sense. I understand.
Maybe because they're just two standalone singles, put them together, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's weird. Maybe it's a licensing thing, but Steve's not done anything remastering with this track. You don't get it on the Best of the B-sides or Beast of the B-sides.
Well, it wasn't a B-side.
Well, but I mean, even so, you still didn't get it. You still didn't get that. The
story
track.
I heard was that the studio were messing around with the people above them, the record label, were messing around with the mix, and so Steve has been soured on the song because of the recording process associated with it.
Yeah, which again, I'm like, well, I don't hear it, but whatever. But I think
I imagine he fixed it back.
Oh yeah, but the video I think is fun. The story of the guy dressed in Eddie comes up a little too quickly, hits his head on the camera and breaks his nose or something. And but I think I love Women in Uniform. I always enjoyed that song. I thought it was a good one.
For me, the value in Women in Uniform, even more than the song, was the music video. Here was me having a chance to see Iron Maiden with Paul Di'Anno. And we always thought it was really interesting how he held his microphone. He just sort of held it kind of like this, like that. He didn't hold it like this, like a lot of singers. He held it more like
he's
this.
Drinking a bottle of alcohol.
And it was very punky.
Yeah.
And we always liked the song. We thought it was catchy. To me, I mean, sure, it doesn't really sound Maiden-y. It doesn't sound like a Maiden original, but it has some bits in it that do, like the guitar bit in the middle there,
And the guitar harmonies that are present all over this song are Maiden originals. The original Skyhooks version didn't have those on there.
Right. We'll take it from there, Harrison. What do you think about
like obviously sounding much better than I could do. So I guess I'll lead in. Yeah, I like Women in Uniform. I like it a lot. I like both versions of the song. They're both very different. In addition to that, guitar harmony. Iron Maiden's is a more metal-y take, and Skyhooks more rock and roll. This was a very closely after release, because the Skyhooks version came out in '78 on their album, and then Maiden have it in '80. So I think this is probably the least amount of gap between Release and Maiden cover, because they did Cross-Eyed Mary and other stuff on their B-sides of 70s bands and stuff. But yeah, no, I like Women in Uniform.
So the last original song B-side that we have to talk about is a song called Burning Ambition, which was from the Running Free single. Not particularly a song that we you don't hear anybody talking about Burning Ambition, even though it's an original, even though it's that first lineup. What do you think about this one, Johnny? Do you have any impression at all?
It's Maiden trying to sound like the 70s, but then it introduces that faster gallop toward the middle with the solo section. Not a bad song, not one I tend to go back to a lot, but it's got its moments. That's about all I can really say about it. It's short, very short. It's only maybe 2.5 minutes or something like that. So it's a really, really quick in your face and out the door kind of a track. But yeah, that's really about all I got.
I called it corny in my notes, and I said that it kind of feels like a prototype, an Iron Maiden prototype, that they hadn't quite arrived at what they wanted to do yet. So, here's some fast stuff, and here's a do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Here's a guitar that sounds like it could have a harmony built out of it, but it's not quite there yet. Decent original. It's got some good Paul Di'Anno singing about women again, which is a rare thing, once again, in Iron Maiden. They didn't really do that very much after the first 2 albums. It's a curiosity that is valuable to fans of the band, but to me, it's not really. It's not.
I could have my facts wrong, but I think this is the very first song Steve Harris wrote.
I think I've heard that story too, actually. Yeah.
Well, take it from there, Harrison. Any more thoughts?
Well, I love Burning Ambition. I acknowledge that it's the perfect B-side because it's stylistically incongruent with the rest of the songs on the Iron Maiden album, because it's a lot brighter and peppier than those songs. So I like the fact it's on the B-side. It makes a great B-side. I love it. It's fast, it's fun, it's exciting, and short. Great song, great B-side.
Okay, from there we take it to the live stuff. There were 2 live B-sides, which were Drifter and I've Got the Fire, a Montrose cover written by Ronnie Montrose. Great live versions on these single B-sides to be had. I've Got the Fire was later re-recorded by Iron Maiden with Bruce Dickinson in the studio, but this original version has a little bit more, shall I say, fire. Usually at this point of the show, we're going to let Harrison talk about the album, or sorry, the tour for the album, and songs that were played live, songs that were played live. But before we do that, Johnny Metal, do you have anything to say about these 2 live B-sides?
Well, as far as Drifter, all I got is, all right, I need y'all to sing on this one. This is a song called Drifter.
Drifter.
All right, you ready to sing? Da da be da da. Yo 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 yo. Yeah yeah. Who would not want to be in the middle of that crowd during that song? That is all I've
said that myself.
That's one of my most favorite Paul Di'Anno moments, is listening to Drifter live, especially live at where this was recorded from, which is escaping my memory, at the Apollo, I think. But wherever it was, it's one of my favorite live moments from Paul Di'Anno. That yo 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 yo. That was the little key to the band to say hey, or the little signal to the band. It's like, okay, we're done with the crowd singing. Now it's time to go back and to do the without the crowd participation. So no, I've always loved this version of Drifter. Always.
Awesome.
And I've Got the Fire. I think is also well done, very spirited, very good cover of it. I like the energy of it. It sounds like it closes the complete shows by when you hear Paul at the end of the song. So, yeah, I think they do a very good version of this.
Yeah, this was I've Got the Fire was the very last song they played on the Iron Maiden tour. Which, to talk about the tour, it's actually rare that they included a cover in their main set like that. Although I suppose this still was their early days. But the Iron Maiden tour, it was a 103-show tour of England and Europe with a mix of support and headline shows. The most notable of those support shows was in support of Kiss on their Unmasked tour, which was also a point of contention between the band and Dennis Stratton, because allegedly he was hanging out with Kiss more than he was with his own band. Stratton was a bit older, if I recall correctly, but they didn't really like that. And so towards the end of the tour, he was fired and replaced by Adrian Smith. This was the first, but not the last time Iron Maiden would dismiss a member towards the end of the tour and then do a few dates at the end to break in their new member. The set list was all the songs from the debut plus Sanctuary plus about 6 from Killers, The Ides of March and Wrathchild. If I recall correctly, the Ides of March didn't lead into Wrathchild as the opener. They were separate, which was interesting. Another Life, Killers were played. Killers probably with the earlier lyrics that you hear on BBC Archives and Live at the Rainbow. Innocent Exile and Drifter were also played. As for sort of like oddities that made their way into the set list here and there, Invasion and Women in Uniform were both each played on one date. These were separate dates from each other, though. As for the album itself, in following tours, it's had decent representation. Obviously, you have Iron Maiden always popping up, Running Free and Sanctuary's are regulars. Remember Tomorrow, Transylvania, and Phantom of the Opera would pop up every now and then. But the sort of like, I guess, the tour where it got the most representation was, oddly enough, Bruce's farewell tour, the real life tour, where they played 5 songs from the debut album, including instrumental Transylvania. It's like, hey, Bruce, we're sending you off. Also, play 5 of Diano's songs, plus one of them you're not even singing for, sort of thing. It was really weird, that. But yeah, if you want to hear these songs done live with Bruce, the real live tour is probably your best bet.
Awesome. Thanks, Harrison. Well, I think at the end of the day, this remains one of my favorite Iron Maiden albums. So last thing that we should talk about is the artwork by Derek Riggs. This is the first Eddie that most of us were made aware of. He has the punk rock hair. Yep, and Harrison's got, maybe you could hold that up a little closer to the screen so we can compare. You can see it's been completely repainted. Eddie's eyes, I prefer sort of
Eddie
what I
does
call
not
the
have red
lightning
eyes. The traditional Derek Riggs Eddie does not have red eyes. That's like a key character part of him. And along with that, they really messed up the horror. This is a horrid redesign, unfortunately.
It really is. This one sort of has a hollow, blank, horrific kind of look to it. I love the eyes better. I call that the lightning eyes, although they're really not lightning eyes yet.
They are in late, your version has
later.
A lot of life to it. This is just dull.
Right.
And the hair doesn't connect to his head right. But yeah, anyway, that's enough shitting on the crap artwork. Let's talk about the good artwork.
There it is. Again,
well, originally it was just a mohawk. It was a punk, a piece of punk
He added the
Derek Riggs had done called Electric Matthew Says Hello, and then the band asked him to add some more metal hair around. And this Eddie we wouldn't see again ever. Even on like Sanctuary, he already had like his Killer's metal hair. He wouldn't appear on Best of the Beast. Like, this is an Eddie that was one and done. He was evolved into Killers, and then that was sort of like the quintessential Eddie for a while. But no, I really like this cover art. It's some of my favorite cover art of all time.
The only other observation I'll add is that Derek Riggs really has a knack for street lamps. He uses them in a lot of art. Johnny Metal just showed one there. We have 3 street lamps here, and the eyes sort of match. The moon sort of matches. They all have halos around them. There's always these little street scenes that Derek Riggs is so good at. There's stuff going on in those windows back there. The red light is Charlotte the Harlots. Yeah, I guess I did have more to say about the artwork. Well, that's it for this album, folks. I would still rank this as one of my favorite Maiden albums of all time. I love it. I play it through frequently. Production be damned. I'll give it 4.5 out of 5 stars today. Johnny Metal, what do you think? 4.5 out of 5? You think?
I'd go with that. This one's probably, again, of the two Diano albums, I go to this one a lot more than I do Killers for whatever reason. It's just, that's always how it's been. But yeah,
I mean, this album has a presence that Killers just doesn't. Even though
Yeah.
Killers isn't a great, amazing album, like
Yeah.
you know, you hold up Killers, you hold up the debut. One is Killers. I mean, Killers great album. The other is the debut. Like,
Yeah.
It's just a difference in the way you think about it.
Yep. So yeah,
Maybe that's why
I go a good 4.5.
And maybe that difference is why they make such a good 1-2 punch in the catalog.
Yep.
Yeah.
Harrison, any last word on Killers?
As I'm already saying, yeah, I love this album. As I said when I reviewed this album, any other band would be happy if this was their best album, but for Iron Maiden, they were just getting started. I can't give it anything less than the full 5 out of 5. It's one of the top 5 Iron Maiden albums I reach for most frequently. And yeah, it's just amazing that it was only up from here.
Awesome. Well, that's it, folks. Iron Maiden, 1980, done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next time, it'll be Martin Popoff and Killers. So we'll see you then. Take care.